You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron. Now here's your host, Ethan Hristodoulou.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Hristodoulou, and it is time again to make some predictions, this time around for the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. Just bear with me. I am a little sick. I'm going to be honest. I feel like I'm battling a fever, a blocked nose, a sore throat right now. I have not done well with being healthy so far in the new year. This is the second time this year, and we are 17 days into the new year that I've been sick. So some stuff's just going around work, and I'm catching all of it. So please bear with me if I'm sniffling and whatnot as I go through. I'm trying my best here. We're diving into picks, though. We're looking at 4 games. We've got a lot to discuss. So as always, dive into the comment section. I want to hear from you all. Who do you like? Who do you dislike? And as always, reminder, we're just here to have fun. I am by no means an expert. I'm just a guy that likes making picks. We went 4-2 last week. I'm hoping to see if we can get at least 3 of the 4 games right this week. And we'll go in order, time-based wise. So with the Houston Texans going into Kansas City to take on the Chiefs, first game of the weekend here, a rematch of Week 16. And Patrick Mahomes coming into this game right now could be a bit of a problem for this Texans team, or this Texans team, considering how hot they are right now defensively and just the way they've been turning footballs over this season, could be what finally takes this Chiefs team down. Now, these two teams, again, matched up back in week number 16. The Chiefs obviously getting the better of them. That was also the game where Tank Dell went down and was lost for the season. The Chiefs came away with a win in that one, 27-19 here. There is a big thing that kind of worries me for the Texans in this one here, and it is the availability of running back Joe Mixon and whether he'll be able to play or not. As of me recording this, he is currently still questionable. And it sounds like he's going to be a game-time decision, so whether or not he plays, I think dictates greatly the chances that the Texans have in this one here. But there are a couple of things I'm really looking at for this matchup, and I think the first one that I've got to point out is, of course, the pass-rushing duo over there in Houston, Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter, and how they match up against DJ Humphries and Jawan Taylor on the tackle positions for the Chiefs here. First time these two teams matched up here, Houston only got one singular sack in that game. Whoa. And they only got 16 pressures total on Mahomes on the 45 dropbacks that he had. Not bad, not great. I would say a solid performance, at least pressure-wise, but you're hoping for a little bit more, especially from these two guys that are working the edge of your defense here. Will Anderson last week looked really good. Sack and a half. He had another 2.5 coming from Mario Edwards and Danico Autry as well. I think it is imperative that if the Houston Texans want to come away with a win in this game here, they have got to get in there and they've got to pressure Mahomes, and they've got to bring him down as well. It's not enough just to make him uncomfortable. He can make throws when he's under pressure. We have seen some of the circus things that Mahomes have done over the years. You've got to get him uncomfortable, but also bring him down as well. It can't just be as simple as putting him under pressure here. And the pass protection has not been perfect by any stretch of the imagination for Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes has been sacked a career high 36 times this season. So there is a bit of a weakness with the way this offensive line has been working, especially in pass protection this year. So the way I see it, if the Texans really want to come out victorious here, they've got to get to Mahomes. They've got to make him uncomfortable, but they've also got to bring him down. The other thing that I'm looking at here, and a lot of the focus of this game in my eyes goes on to what the Texans defense can do ultimately, because the offense right now, it looked pretty good last week, I will say, against the Chargers once they got themselves figured out. That 99-yard drive that CJ Stroud put together was phenomenal, and then from that point forward, the offense really caught fire and came to life. But for me, this Texans defense and their ability to turn the ball over, the first time these two teams met, they did not force a single one. But when you look at what Houston has done this year, the track record that they have been excellent at turning the ball over. If all goes well and they come away with maybe an interception, maybe a forced fumble or two of one or the other, something along the lines, I do think that the Texans have a chance here. Houston has had 3 or more takeaways in 6 different games this year, including last week's matchup against the Chargers. They're very aggressive coming after the football. football. Derek Stingley Jr. has really evolved into that number one corner that Houston drafted him to be over the last few years, with 5 interceptions in each of the past 2 seasons. It's not including the 2 picks. We're just talking regular season here. But 5 interceptions in each of the past 2 regular seasons, plus the other couple of 2 he just got in that postseason game last week. So the way I see it, you've got to get in there, be aggressive, force the offense into making mistakes, force Patrick Mahomes into making mistakes. And for what it's worth, the Chiefs have not been turning the football over, and that is a big part of why they've been winning all of these close contests, is because they're not giving possessions away. They're not giving opponents extra opportunities to put points on the board. Since losing to the Bills in Week 11, 0 turnovers for the Chiefs offensively. Patrick Mahomes is currently on a career best 237 straight passes without an interception. He has 11 touchdowns to 0 picks since losing to the Bills in Week 11. If they can come in, steal a possession or 2, I definitely think this Texans team has a shot to bring the Chiefs down. So much is on the line. The other thing that is worth noting in here, and I thought this was an awesome stat to find, Patrick Mahomes. There's a lot on the line here, but Patrick Mahomes, when it matters most, shows up, and his record in the divisional round shows just that. He is a perfect 6-0 in the divisional round of the playoffs right now. So there is history to be made if the Texans can get it done. As for who I think is going to win, though, I'm expecting this to once again be another close one-possession contest. The line that I'm seeing for this game right now, and again, I'm not a betting channel by any means, but the line I'm seeing for that, what is it, -8.5 right now for the Chiefs, feels like a lot considering the last time they played, the Texans only lost by 8. So to see that number even larger than the first time they matched up, especially how good the Texans defense looked coming out of last week's matchup, I think they're probably going to be a little bit hotter, a little bit more on fire. CJ Stroud looked good once he finally put it together in that game. I expect this to be close. I expect it to be kind of a nail-biter here. I don't think it's going to come easy, and it hasn't really for the Chiefs all season long, so I expect it once again to be another one of those nail-biter contests. But I have such a hard time going against the Chiefs here. It's not something I like to do very often. I've been burned once this season picking against them, but I also got a game right because I picked the Bills to beat them when they did earlier in the year as well. So I think I'm 1-1 picking against the Chiefs because I'm pretty sure I've picked for them every single time except for when they played Denver a couple of weeks ago. And I mean, I don't really count that because not a single starter even felt like they sniffed the field in that game. So I like the Chiefs. I think it's a tight affair. They get the job done 24-20, but there is a real path to success and a real path to a win for the Texans here. And it really just starts and stops, in my eyes, with the defense and what they're able to do in maybe generating an extra possession or 2 for the Houston Texans offense. The second one we'll look at here, the other Saturday game. We got ourselves the Washington Commanders going into Detroit to take on the Lions. 2 of the top scoring offenses in the NFL this season, Detroit being ranked number 1 and Washington being ranked number 5. Lots of points potentially getting put on the board here. And the point differential thing with Detroit is just unbelievable to see. Plus 222 is a wild number to look at when it comes to that statistic there. 2 big things for the Lions came out a couple of days ago, and that's going to be that they're getting 2 big guys in both David Montgomery and Terrion Arnold back for their starting lineups on both offense and defense. Montgomery obviously splitting a ton with Jahmyr Gibbs this season, the Sonic and Knuckles tandem, the fact that he's back in the fold, the big bruising back to complement Gibbs and just the absolute sonic speed he can move out on the field. I'm really looking forward to seeing Montgomery back in the fold. I would assume that Jahmyr Gibbs probably still eats up a ton of the snaps as Montgomery kind of works his way back in, but this is one that I think is a very welcome addition to this offense in Detroit. Now, as for who I think is going to win this and just like a couple of things that I'm looking at for the actual matchup itself, that Commanders' run defense is the big thing that I'm focusing on here. They allowed only 101 yards to Tampa Bay last week, which is massive. Tampa Bay, one of the best rushing offenses in the NFL, and one of the more lower key stories where you had a team that literally was one of the worst, if not, I think, the worst rushing offense last season, flipping that script and turning it around. And I think they finished the season ranked 4th in rushing. So excellent work by Washington, who their run defense has not necessarily been perfect this season, and they have been prone to letting up a fair amount of yards when the going got tough here. But with David Montgomery back, you're looking at 2 running backs now that have combined for 2,100 yards and 28 touchdowns between the two. I'm really interested in seeing how this defensive front is able to stand up to the task of defending that power and speed that Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery bring for the Detroit Lions. However, there is a bit of a plus on Washington's end. Guard Kevin Zeitler, a big piece of that interior offensive line over there in Detroit, will miss this game here. He's a big proponent of what they do when it comes to rushing in between the tackles. So a bit of a plus side, or bit of a plus on the side for Washington there. But I'm not necessarily too worried about Detroit, because we know what their style of football is, and they will pound the rock regardless of who's lining up in front of them. The other thing I'm keeping in mind here is Detroit's ability to just flat out contain the threat that is rookie phenom Jayden Daniels, who right now, as things stand, coming through this first season, there's no definitive answer to this yet, but at least as it currently stands, looks like the best quarterback that came out of this year's draft class. That being said, Jayden Daniels coming off his 6th game of racking up over 300 total yards of offense. His ability to work with his legs, his decision-making on when to use his legs, and what he is able to do with his arm is such a devastating threat for defenses right now, and it's been incredible to watch. He's sitting on 891 yards rushing as a quarterback, and that's second to only Lamar Jackson as far as the quarterback hierarchy goes. It's a breath of fresh air for somebody who caught a lot of criticism for a large majority of the season for running a college system, and then on top of that, just how frail he was coming out of the draft because he was a little too skinny for some people's liking. This is one of those stories that I've really enjoyed watching and covering over the season. That and his ability, like I was saying, with his arm talent and the connection that he has established with wide receiver Terry McLaurin, who is literally having a career season at this point. He has the 2nd most receptions he's ever had. He has the 3rd most yards he's ever had. He caught 13 touchdown passes this season during the regular season, which is nearly double his career best to that point. He's got the best catch percentage, hitting over 70% this season of his career. There is a lot to worry about with this offense, but a lot of it starts and stops with Jayden Daniels. Detroit is ranked 16th according to Next Gen Stats against quarterbacks taking off and scrambling, and we've seen some tough games defensively against the pass, even fairly recently when you go back to games against like the Bills and the 49ers, and the number's a little inflated against the Bears because they had to throw so much because they fell behind so quickly, but more so for me, the examples being Buffalo and San Francisco more than anything else. Neutralizing what type of a threat that Jayden Daniels is going to be key to Detroit's success here. And that all obviously goes back to just the amount of injuries they've dealt with on defense. And does that affect them in a game like this here? In Detroit, though, with so much on the line and just the way we have seen Detroit absolutely curb stomp opponents week in and week out offensively, it's really hard for me to pick against them. It really is. But I do think that the Commanders have what it takes to get this one done. I think they can keep this game tight, and something tells me that there's a possibility defenses go out the window in this game here, and we're going to see a lot of points. So with all that being said, I am leaning the Lions on this one here, and I like a high-scoring affair, 34-28. Detroit gets the job done. They advance to the NFC Championship, and I think we can look back on Jayden Daniels' rookie season as a very excellent example of just what a dual-threat quarterback can be when you build around them correctly, because this Commanders story as a whole is one of the better stories we've gotten from this season, literally going from one of the worst to one of the best in the NFL, from picking, what were they, number 3 in the draft last year, number 4? Number 2, I'm sorry, they picked Jayden Daniels number 2. Number 2 in the draft, even better in their case there, all the way to a team that is sitting at 12-5 with a playoff win and a shot to make the NFC Championship. It's been fantastic, but I do think I like the Lions to stop the Cinderella run here. Moving into Sunday's games, first game that we're going to look at is going to be the Rams going into Philadelphia to take on the Eagles, a game that has already happened once again this season. Common theme for this divisional rounds matchup here. The Rams losing 37-20 against Philadelphia in what was a really tough outing for them, especially offensively. You could say defensively too. It was a really tough outing altogether for the Rams here. We've seen some improvement though since that game with the Rams defense and just how well they've been able to play here. We've seen some cause for concern, I would say, by the Eagles as well. A lot of settling for field goals last week. And there's a lot of people out there. I don't know if I would say myself included, because I have been higher and lower on the Eagles offense, it feels like, depending on the week, and I'm not really sure where I stand with them, but there have been doubts of just how effective this Eagles offense can be when the going gets tough here. Now, that being said, I do think this game's pretty wide open as for who can come away with a win, despite just how dominant the Eagles looked the first time around these two teams played. And a lot of it just starts with, again, that defensive front in LA and what they're able to do in terms of stopping Saquon Barkley. It's all about those young guys up front. When you look at Braden Fisk and Jared Verse, those two guys, what they've done as rookies there, and of course guys like Byron Young on the defensive line as well. If they are able to create the pressure that they have been able to create in the passing game, get to the quarterback, but also be able to bottle up Saquon Barkley to some extent. I wouldn't say completely, but to some extent, I do think the Rams defense has a chance to at least slow down this Philadelphia Eagles offense a bit with some of the struggles we have seen them having as of late, and find some success at the very least here. The first time they played, LA allowed over 300 yards on the ground, so it was not a great time. And of course, a lot of this, in theory, is a lot easier said than done. Barkley, 2,000-yard rusher, averaging 5.8 yards per attempt. It's a lot easier said than it is done, but that is kind of what I'm looking at here. I expect that defensive front to be as aggressive as it has been all season and try to disrupt what Jalen Hurts is doing when he has the football in his hands, but they've got to be careful that they're not too aggressive, so that, maybe they're not taking their rushing lanes a little too far, or maybe if they think it's a pass, but it ends up being a run, and then there's a gaping hole for Saquon Barkley to blow through. You've just got to be careful and be smart about how aggressive you are up front there. The other thing that I'm going to be looking at here on the flip side, the Rams passing attack and just how effective they are going to be able to be against this Eagles defense that has just rounded into form this season from basically week 4 on, and it feels like they've gotten better and better each and every single week. We've seen a lot from the rookies in the secondary like Cooper DeJean and Quinion Mitchell, and of course veterans like Darius Slay. You're getting a good amount of effort and production from everyone in that group over there, but we've also seen a lot from Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and some of the other guys when they are actually healthy and on the football field, like Demarcus Robinson, Kyron Williams, benefiting from this passing attack coming back to life ever since that Week 8 return of Kupp and Nacua at the same time. So the way I see it here, if Philadelphia's defense is disruptive, they're playing tight, sticky coverage, they're not losing Nacua and Kupp within their coverages, you're able to break up a pass or two early, there is a good chance that maybe we see a very similar result to the first game that we got. It really just comes down to who wins that battle there, because if you look at the way things went for the Rams offensively in that first matchup, very flat in the first half. You open up with a fumble. From there, you score a touchdown, then it's basically 3 and out, and next thing you know, you're going into the second half of the game, and you've basically done nothing on offense aside from a singular drive. So if you can clean up some of that stuff in the first half, in this first game here for the Rams, I'm expecting that they keep the game a little bit tighter. Your defense is probably not gassing out as quickly. The Eagles are not absolutely demolishing you in the second half of the game, just scoring while your offense just can't seem to really get anything going. If they can keep the balance in their offense, if they can find a way to work through some of Philadelphia's coverages, I do think the Rams have an actual chance here. I really like the way this team has rounded out. And then last week, with the adversity they've dealt with, having to, you end up losing your home game, essentially having to go to Arizona. Yeah, a lot of Rams fans in attendance, but you still end up having to travel for what was supposed to be a home game for you. They're battle tested. They've gone against some adversity here already in the playoffs, going up against a team that had one of the best records in the NFL this season in the Minnesota Vikings. I do think there is a route and a path to victory for this Rams team. The Eagles, though, as I've said for quite some time in my eyes, one of the best teams in the NFL from top to bottom, from what they have on their coaching staff to the actual roster itself to the on-field product they actually put out there, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But that running game is no joke. And yes, this might not have been the most productive year altogether for Jalen Hurts, but he's still been good enough when they've needed him to be for them to be in the current position that they are. And that's all you can really ask for when things aren't going as well as you'd like them as a quarterback. But I think I'm going to take the upset on this one here, and I'm going to go Rams 23-17. There is something that has me a little bit worried about the Eagles' offense right now, and I've been sitting on the Eagles as the number one team in the NFL for quite some time, going back to my power rankings that wrapped up at the end of the season. But this feels like a perfect storm. And I told myself I couldn't just settle on the best team for each and every single game. And I wanted to have at least like a gamble pick or two within this here. So this will be one of them. I'm going to go Rams 23-17 to get the job done. Tight contest. The defense wins out, and they are managing just enough points to be able to take down the Philadelphia Eagles and pull off an upset here. And then finally, to wrap up the predictions, big game this week, Ravens, Bills. This game, in my eyes, has a bit of a risk factor to it for both of these teams. So week 4 rematch, Baltimore slaughtering Buffalo in Baltimore 35-10. If you assume that things go the way my predictions are, so we have the Chiefs winning the first AFC game on Saturday, you would think that this game kind of then turns into the who gets to play the Chiefs Bowl for the right to go to the Super Bowl type deal. Both of these teams have a bit of a desire, I guess you could say, and a bit of an issue trying to get over the hump against the Chiefs when it mattered the most in the playoffs. I have some concern that these two teams are going to wind up battling it out so hard for the right to play the Chiefs that it ends up being like a shoot yourself in the foot type of game where you gave so much in this one that it costs you next week. I hope that's not the case, but there is like a piece of me in the back of my mind that somewhat feels that way. I do think both of these teams, and obviously we've seen Buffalo already beat the Chiefs this year, and Baltimore a toe tap, a big toe away from potentially stealing one all the way back at the beginning of the season against the Chiefs as well. Both these teams have every shot and then some to be able to take down the Chiefs next week. My concern is just how aggressive this game ends up getting. That ends up costing you because of fatigue going into next week. That being said, though, focusing on the actual game at hand, two of the best scoring offenses in the league, Buffalo ranking number 2, Baltimore ranking number 3. Both these teams finding very different ways to get the job done week in and week out here. Baltimore predicated on a really good defense and an unbelievable run game, where Buffalo offense is far more balanced, and the defensive side, it's been a little bit of peaks and valleys, I would say, depending on the time of year. But Buffalo has to find a way to slow down Derrick Henry. Keyword slow down, because just like I was talking about with Saquon Barkley earlier, I look at Derrick Henry the same way. You're not going to stop him, but you can at least try and slow him down. 199 yards, including an 87-yard score the first time around these two teams played here. Baltimore finished that game with 271 total rushing yards on the game. And, I mean, Baltimore has just been unbelievable running the football, so much so that their yards per attempt of 5.76 as a team when running the football broke a 61-year-old record of 5.74 that was set by the 1963 Browns in terms of rushing yards per attempt. I didn't even realize that was on the line this season, and that was where they wound up at the end of the year. I was just doing some research, and I came across the number. That's just how damn good Baltimore is at running the football right now. Derrick Henry's 5.9 yards per attempt has just been it's so impressive to watch. He has been bulldozing defenses. In Buffalo, for what it's worth, 12th in yards per game allowed this season, averaging about 115 yards per game. Their last 5, that number has dipped down to about 88 yards per game, but when you look at the opponents, Denver, New England, New York Jets, New England again, Detroit Lions, Detroit managed 473 passing yards in that game, so they didn't really have to run the football as much. It was basically just an all-out shootout of battle of the arms between the quarterbacks. They've allowed 4.5 yards per attempt. I mean, it's one of those things where, again, it's not so much stop Derrick Henry. It's just try to mitigate the damage that Derrick Henry feels like he's inevitably going to do, so that you're not looking at over nearly 200 yards, 1 yard shy as it was in week 4. That's basically what the ultimate goal here is for Baltimore. On the other side for Buffalo, on the topic of running the ball here, I do think that focusing on the ground game is key for Buffalo here. The reason that this Buffalo offense has felt like one of the best they've ever had, despite not necessarily having like that true number 1 wide receiver and Josh Allen not needing to throw 45 touchdown passes in a season, is because of the fact that James Cook has emerged as a legit threat in the backfield. Their running back 1, the guy that they can lean on to keep this offense nice and balanced. I don't think it's a coincidence that the offense has been as effective as it has all season long with this emergence that we've gotten this year. Baltimore's pass defense is a bit of a nightmare when it comes to dealing with opposing defenses. Ever since they basically changed where Kyle Hamilton was lining up every snap, it's been massive for them. They've allowed just 200 yards passing. They allowed 200 yards passing for the first time since week 12 last week against Pittsburgh. And I mean, you're talking like 2 of their last 8 games, they've allowed over 200 yards passing. In one of those games, the number was like 202. So they have been shutting it down through the air. Baltimore's run defense is a tough group, but for what it's worth, like I said, James Cook's been good. 4.9 yards per attempt on the ground. And the first time that they played, he only got 9 carries for 39 yards. Granted, that game did get a little bit out of hand. You basically watched Derrick Henry shoot out of a cannon for 87 yards and a score, and then Baltimore just started getting ahead. Running the football just became less of an option because you were trying to play catch-up. So I think if you can just balance out the offense early, get James Cook going early, it'll open things up for what the passing game can do. It'll obviously put you in a better spot just as far as being able to keep the defense guessing as to what you're trying to do, open up the play action. Josh Allen's been very good when it comes to the play action this year. His completion percentage there is at nearly 72%. So the way I see it, you got to get the run game going here. And again, this is one of those things, in theory, a lot easier said than done, but you have got to find some sort of way of getting the ball going on the ground, because the way the defense has been working in Baltimore right now, if they can key in on what you're doing, it's going to look a lot more similar to the 35-10 beatdown you got, as opposed to a Buffalo Bills offense where, they're putting up over 30 points in a game and rocking and rolling. They've got to stay balanced, and they've got to set the tone early against this team. Baltimore is as tough as they come. As for who I think is going to win, like I said, I told myself I can't just go picking favorites for this weekend, despite it feeling like that's going to be the way it goes. And like, I picked the Rams in that last game, and there is a piece of me that maybe doesn't necessarily believe in that pick all too much, but I do think there's an avenue there, and I feel like it is possible, and it wouldn't shock me if they get it, so that's why I leaned Rams on that one. I definitely like Buffalo in this game here. This feels like the righting the wrong of the early portion of the season, where you just absolutely fell flat against a playoff contender in Baltimore. But the Ravens, the way they are playing right now, is just a level of football that you don't see quite often, from what they're doing on the ground week in and week out to how good Lamar Jackson has been throwing the football. The defense has just been incredible the back half of the season, and everything feels like it's going right for Baltimore. So I think I'm going to have to settle on a favorite again here and go with the Ravens. This is a toss-up for me. I really am having a hard time of coming away with who's going to actually win this one. But being in Baltimore and just me liking the overall roster in Baltimore maybe a little bit more, I have the Ravens winning, but I have them winning 31-28. I think we're going to get a bit of a shootout here, but it's going to come down to just maybe who has the ball last. And in my eyes, I could see a position where Baltimore goes down, kicks a game-winning field goal, maybe gets the go-ahead touchdown with just a few seconds to go. It's unfortunate because these are two teams that I want to see in the AFC Championship, and I hate that one of these teams has to lose. So I'm going to side Baltimore in this one here. This is another one I'm not super confident on the pick. This one and the Eagles and Rams one, I'm a little bit on the fence about. I feel a lot better about Saturday's games more than anything else, but I do like the Ravens in this one here to get the job done at home. But those are my predictions. As always, if you made it to the end, I greatly appreciate it. My nose is so blocked right now. I'm sorry if I sound ridiculous. Let me know in the comment section down below. Who do you like? Who do you dislike? Your thoughts on this week's matchups. But I hope to see you all again real soon. Catch you all next time. Have a good one.